was about to say just waiting on YouTube. I was about to say that please don't let me down YouTube. But anyway, this is the third and penultimate part of Eurasians to connect together, Eurasians together, that kind of thing. Where I hope we'll unite together and support each other, encourage each other, and make the world a better place. And have some selfish and some less selfish goals and dreams, I guess. So these are pointers number 21 to 30 as per usual. Hope you enjoy them. Just trying to think if there was anything else I was going to cover for the intro. Can't think of anything else. I just hope I didn't forget anything. But here goes. So point number 21, as the saying goes, 21 again, I pretty much always say. I would love for us to connect together and visit and tour Asian nations where our roots are. And I talked about how I love for, like, maybe there could be, there's the Hafu project, Hapa project. Hafu meaning, for those who don't know, meaning, I think Hafu is part Korean and part something else, and Hapa, no, it's the other way around, sorry. Hafu is part Japanese mixy, part Japanese mixed person, and Hapa is part Korean and part other. And there's Anglo-Indians, Indos, Kristangs, and I don't know of any other Eurasian group. There may well be. I mean, there's Amerasian, but some of those are African American mixed with Asian as well. So there's Malaysian as well. Not sure how many mixed Eurasians there are in Vietnam or Iraq or places like that. Maybe a few. But anyway, whatever mixed whatever mixed Eurasian part, in other words, part European and part Asian groups there are, and I suppose Malaysian as well, and mixed race generally, I guess. These ideas could apply to each of those groups. I was thinking of doing one for like mixed part Asian generally, including Malaysians, but I suppose I've covered most of the stuff in these videos, I guess. The only different one, I guess, between Eurasians and Malaysians, the only different plans I would have would be generally about Eurasians supporting Italian football, whereas I love for Malaysians and other mixed race people support Brazilian football. Obviously, that would be their choice, but I think it's one of my quirky things. It'd be just fitting, though. I think like Malaysians supporting Brazil, Malaysians in Brazil, and that kind of thing. But also, I suppose with Eurasians, I would love for us to visit, I'd say, places where I'd love for us to visit Eurasian nations like Turkey, but also where there are Eurasian communities, like as in mixed race Eurasians. I also see like nations like Turkey and other Eurasian nations being country versions, national versions of us, because they're part in Europe and part in Asia. And I guess I'm often told I look Turkish or whatever, as well as Arabic or other backgrounds. I think I'll probably pass over Italian, Spanish, or whatever. So, anyway, hence why I love for Eurasians like myself to support Italian football. Yeah, but that's the reason, I guess. And since I support them since I was young. But maybe we could practice and have football teams that practice with Spanish, French, Portuguese, and even Brazilian and Argentinian teams as well. But I'd love the main ones to be with Italy and with Celtic as well. But I'd love for there to be monuments, museums, and whatnot about our history. Now, I'd love for them to be more in the Asian nations, because I feel if it was like, let's say, with the Kristangs in Malaysia and Singapore, if we toured, maybe we could tour Portugal, and again, I suppose it would be up to, I've said before, I don't want to be too dictatorial or autocratic or whatever. I want to be democratic, so it would be up to your other Eurasians as well. But the reason why I'd rather it be in Asia more than Europe is because I want to reparate and reward those nations, as I hope to come to. And I think it would be a bit unfair to go to countries like Portugal, Holland, Britain, and places like that, because those were the ones who colonised them. And dare I say, rather controversially, I guess, to me, colonisation is about stealing, trespass, and even mass murder and that kind of thing. So that's why I'd rather have the monuments and museums and do the tours of places like Malaysia, India, and Singapore, and places like that to sort of, and even Indonesia, to sort of reparate them and in some cases reward them as well. But yeah, finding out about each other's history and also visiting each other's communities and that kind of thing. So like other Eurasians, including Anglo-Indians like myself, visiting Kristangs in Malaysia and Singapore, and also ones from Singapore visiting Malaysians and vice versa. They're sort of communities. So Kristangs, Indos, Hapas, Hafus, and other Eurasians could visit Anglo-Indian communities as well and see what we can do to support each other. So moving on to point number 22, as those are on my bucket list to tour parts of Asia, especially where there are. I'd love to visit. I'd love to do projects that support people in Asia generally and around Asian nations, but especially those with mixed and especially Eurasian groups, as say like Kristangs, Anglo-Indians like myself, Indos, Hapas, Hafus, and whatnot. I'd love to visit those communities as much as possible and talk about how we can collaborate together in modelling, music, movies, and all sorts of different industries, business generally, sports, and things like that. I'd say today, well, yes, technically yesterday being World Football Day. I did want to talk more on that. But for now, I'm going to move on to point number 23. I'd love for us to be philanthropists. I know I mentioned that in point number 11, but I'd love for us to support countries that were colonised, basically, but also to support those, I meant to say, like disadvantaged people. Again, I know I mentioned that before, but so I think we should be content as much as we can, as long as, I know as human beings we want to always achieve more, I guess, in a way, or always want more, or want things we don't have, I guess, people say, but or feel we should do more or achieve more, maybe. But if we know we can do well in business, we can then go and mentor others and give our money away and that kind of thing as much as possible. Again, these are my own personal views. But I think that, I suppose the big question is which one would make you happier in the long run, or even in the short run, I guess. I'm not the most patient, but would having a bicycle, a nice motorbike, nice cars, a nice big house, or even houses, and that kind of thing, would that make you happier? Or would helping the homeless and disabled people and disadvantaged people generally, and tackling poverty and helping to feed the world, would that make you feel better? So I think that's the big question for Eurasians in this case, and other months that I call us, to answer. Now, from a selfish point of view, I'd love to, as I say, fundraise for and help with the marketing of, and even maybe donate to Italian football. I don't see it as that selfish with Celtic because they were born of poverty and oppression. But I say it would be up to different Eurasians. But I wonder if in the future we could say, as Eurasians, this is what we've contributed to the world, and we show what we can do for, just like I'd love for neurodivergent people to do actually, and even those with mental health problems, we show what we can do for Italian football and for Celtic libertarianism, libertarian parties, tackling poverty, limiting wars, war on want, and that kind of thing. Talking about providing water rather than wars and weapons and things like that. Peace through football. Helping former colonies, tackling poverty, alleviating suffering, and spreading peace, love, joy, hope, and happiness, and that kind of thing. So I think it'd be cool if in the future we could say we're proud to help these people and do this sort of thing. From a selfish point of view, I'd say I'd love to show what we could do with time football. So I'd love to get as many Eurasians as possible around the world to get into playing football and coaching and managing, which I talked about before, and also get in to show what we can do to benefit Italian football and Celtic through our ideas, fundraising, and things like that, helping them with marketing, branding, and that kind of thing. Also, I'd love for there to be as many Eurasian football teams as possible, and to look for sponsors within our own community and different organisations. Like I'd love for Microsoft, Samsung, Alibaba, Tata, Reliance Industries, and as many investors and sponsors as possible to sponsor Anglo-Indian and other Eurasian football teams as much as possible. So yeah, I'd love to find ways to reach out to them and see what we could do. Again, I'd love to know if any Eurasians out there, and for any potential allies, might be interested in helping with ideas, and for maybe writing and reaching out to different organisations, people who can write and communicate much more coherently than myself, which is not not so much. But maybe Eurasians with more experience in like running businesses, running organisations, and whatnot could help out with those sorts of things. Now, some Eurasians might want to set up other sports teams like boxing, kickboxing, karate, cricket, tennis, badminton, basketball, or whatever, netball, or whatever it might be. But me personally, I would love to focus much more on the football stuff and not so much on the other sports stuff. But again, these are my personal opinions. Number 24, I'd love for us to help each other to organise our time better. I think like 24 hours in a day, hence point of 24. But again, I'd love for us to be anti-imperialists and support countries that are colonised, especially on their independence days and things like that. Again, maybe we can have football or other sports competitions in Malaysia, India, and places like that. So again, I'd love to support countries that are colonised on their national days, and also look at how we can manage our time as well as possible. Maybe have our own creative rooms. I can think of that, like places where we go, where we could avoid distractions. I really do struggle to avoid distractions because I have so many different ideas and goals on my mind at the same time that I struggle to prioritise and pick one or two, rather than try and do too many at the same time. Even today, I was struggling with that one yesterday, technically. But yeah, helping each other to hold each other to account, maybe, or just give each other ideas and tips on strategies on how to better use our time and make the most of our time on this earth and that kind of thing, in terms of helping ourselves, each other, and the world generally. Again, from a selfish point of view, I'd love for us to benefit town for all and that kind of thing, but I'd also love for us to benefit Celtic and philanthropy and all those sort of things, but in a libertarian manner. Number 25, I'd love for us to support republics. Another thing I was thinking about, actually, on the subject of being struggling to be coherent. If any other Eurasians want to make videos about your ideas on Eurasians, I hope these videos apply to you. I think if I can give it a go, I'm sure you can easily. Also, if you want to do reactions to this video, hopefully from Josh, and obviously, and I'd love for you to share these videos and comment in the comment section, either on Facebook, YouTube, or probably both, about your ideas, especially Eurasians out there and potential allies. Or I'd love for people to maybe ask questions for Eurasians and to talk about what you think about the Eurasian community. So, for instance, people in Malaysia, India, Indonesia, Singapore, and other places, like, what are your experiences with Eurasians? Or what do you think about your own community or Eurasians out there as well? So yeah, I'd love to get people's different views, and I hope you'll share these videos with anyone who's interested in the mixed race experience and especially Eurasians and that kind of thing, and Eurasian themselves. But again, I'd love to prioritise supporting republics, as well as number 26, countries that were colonised. As I say, I'd love for us to be anti-imperialists. Although our one concession for an imperialistic power is to support Italian football. I think that's what I hope it will be, and like Mediterranean football teams, especially Italian ones in particular. I guess, come to think of it, Turkey and its own empire, I disagree with that side of its history, and I'd love to encourage Turkey in the future to be a pacifist nation and that kind of thing, and to be diplomats who can tackle wars. Talking about diplomats, I've got saying point number 4, I guess, in part 1, I'd love for us to be diplomats and not be involved in wars. I'd love to be diplomats, delegates, possibly be involved in politics, political lobbying, political parties and whatnot. Maybe I'll have our own Eurasian political parties where we talk about peace and love, anti-war, pro-peace and love, and that kind of thing. And yeah, I'd love to, as I say, to be anti-imperialist, except for with football. Perhaps not so much. Maybe we could still have anti-imperial football teams, but I know my one concession, as I put it, big word for me, concession, but for a former imperial power or whatever it is to support Italian football. I guess Turkey. I'd love to go to Turkey, honestly, I'd say, and share my political manifesto and ideas and ideals and that kind of thing, and write books about my ideas and that kind of thing, on politics, my ideals, political ideals. And most of them are about peace, love, freedom, and that kind of thing. I wish to God we had more freedom. Also, when I think about my dreams for Eurasians more generally, and for us to unite, I wish that God would, whatever people do to us, or whatever people do against us, I wish God would do against them literally the same, pretty much, punishment for the crime, or maybe almost as bad, or whatever. I like to have the moral high ground. If I could treat everyone slightly better than me, slightly better than how they treat me, that's what I'd love to do, being a nice guy. But I also believe in justice as well, and sometimes that's going to be tough justice, I guess, rough justice. If you don't want to do the time, you shouldn't commit the crime, I guess. But yeah, when I talk about the monuments, museums, maybe even statues, or especially monuments and museums and historical sort of things, for Eurasians, I would love for that mainly to be in nations like Malaysia, India, Indonesia, Singapore, and places like that, within Asia. Number 27. At the same time, I'd love to reward more than punish. So again, I talk about like whatever people do against us, I wish God would do to them pretty much the same. So anyone who gives an errand to do, anyone who calls us, distracts us, or anything like that, I wish God would make sure they get distracted in the same way, hopefully when they're just as busy or whatever. Like I'd love for everyone to be happy and healthy and as free as possible and go to heaven and that kind of thing, and heaven to be really good, of course. But yeah, let's say if someone gave us an errand, then I wish God would give them an errand in heaven and that kind of thing. And that'd be pretty cool. But also, what people do for us, I wish God would do the same. So whoever feeds us, shelters us, looks after us, or whatever, I wish that God, my prayer is, God would do the same. Again, exactly, pretty much exactly, maybe even slightly better than what they did to us, or did against us, or did for us, or whatever. Again, I hope that makes sense as ever. Also, I'd say the three nations, I wish we would, I think there's three nations that I would especially love to reward and say thank you to, basically. Say thank you to and reward them to say thank you. Something like that. And that's Malaysia, because they gave us our own spaces and all that kind of thing. India, probably most of all, because they not only did they allow us to have our own spaces to live in, but they also gave us our own seats in the Lok Sabha, I think it's called, the Indian Parliament and things like that. So I'd love to double thank them and double reward them. And when Brits didn't want us to come here, they allowed us to stay there. So historically, I'd love to thank Malaysia, India, especially India. I thought Indonesia, but I think finding out a bit more, I think they were very anti-mix at the time because they probably blamed mixed race people for imperialism and that kind of. But Singapore is another nation which I love a lot, and they given rights to Christians. So I hope to reward those groups, and I think the more we reward those who look after us, the more people think, oh yeah, these guys are grateful, and if we help them, they'll help us back. Also, again, different businesses and organisations and associations might want to support us in return for PR or things like that. I guess a religion tries to sell itself, so to speak. It might not describe it as selling itself, but it tries to promote and market itself just like a business, I guess. But yeah, any religion, political party, business, or whatever, organisation or association or whatever, I hope that they will get rewarded back, and it could be good for their PR or whatever. So if mosques or Muslim individuals or organisations help us, we could say positive things about Islam, similar with Christianity or any other religion, same with any political party, and same with any business. As I say, if they support, let's say if they support poor people in India, poor Anglo-Indians in India, they tackle poverty amongst Anglo-Indians in India, or they help us with sports teams, especially football, let's say, we could return the favour. One idea I was thinking about in terms of football, I wasn't sure when to explain. I think I'll try and explain it as quickly as possible before we move on to point 28. Is I think I wonder, as a fan of Italian football, if Italy helps China and India to vouch for them, if you like, on their behalf, basically talk on their behalf to host the World Cup, to co-host the World Cup. Maybe China and India would invest in and sponsor Italian football more. That's my creativity, perhaps my dyslexic, interconnected reasoning. But yeah, I hope that makes sense as ever. So yeah, Italy helping, like the Italian FA, Italian society helping China and India to co-host the World Cup, and in return, as they Chinese and Indian companies, or even the Chinese and Indian governments, investing into and sponsoring Italian football teams, as long as they do it within the rules and don't get us into trouble. so they actually benefit us in the short and long term, hopefully. Seeing all these English teams in the finals really disappointing, as I down from, but anyway, probably shouldn't say that. But number 28, I hope we can turn negative situations into positives. Number 29, I hope we can unite as much as possible and work with other mixed race groups, and number 30, if I'm really dreaming, I'd love for us to be able to be like mayonnaise, scorched gigolos, porn stars, and stuff like that. Anyway, on that bombshell. Yeah, with white, black, and forest chicks. But, probably shouldn't say that. But anyway, peace and love, and I'm out.